I am having a staring contest and a battle of wills with the dog. You may hear him whining in the background. So, this video, I was planning on doing this video a little while ago when we first got some of the stuff about Bonnie and Kuma. And then I'm like, well, I want to wait a little bit to see what else we kind of learn a little bit more about their relationship. But I'll probably end up doing another video where I talk more about like kind of what else we learn about Bonnie and Kuma's relationship and Kuma's past and such, and Bonnie's past as part of it. Later on, when we get some more of the flashbacks from inside the memory bubble. But I kind of wanted to do a video where I talk about father-daughter relationships slash bonds and such in One Piece because, as a lot of people that are One Piece fans know, Eiichiro Oda has two daughters. We don't know their names, which is fair enough. We don't know their exact birth dates. Again, fair enough. A lot of celebrities and a lot of stuff like that like to keep, personal life over here and, professional life over here, keep certain things out of the spotlight. Perfectly understandable. I don't blame them in the slightest. I know that some celebrities do that and other public figures do that, and some put it out there and some don't, and it just shifts around. Yeah, the dog keeps staring at me. We're still kind of getting him recovering a bit from the seizures and trying to figure out the best types of medication to give him. So he's still a little bit wobbly and stuff like that, and he's a little bit iffy about trying to get up and down off of the beds and stairs and stuff like that. So just for anyone who wanted a slight bit of an update on that. So I'm going to do a little bit of a dive a little bit into some of what we do know about Eiichiro Oda's wife and daughters. So his wife, again, I'm probably going to butcher a lot of these names. I apologize. His wife is Chikai Inaba. And they met sometime around, I believe, 2004. She had been doing she had been Nami in like one of the live action versions of like a One Piece thing that they did, the performance plays or something like that. She played Nami. She was a campaign girl, a race queen, different things like that. And Oda met her there. She'd been an active model since the 1990s through the early 2000s in Japan. She was about 27 years old when they met. I do not remember exactly how old Oda was when they met, but they met, like sometime around 2002 into 2004 is like where they met, and she ended up being part of, playing Nami and some stuff, and some of the live action, performances and stuff like that they did. And, publicity things and stuff like that. And then they started dating 2 years later. And then they got married in November of 2004, November 7th, 2004. For reference, this is around kind of the Water 7 arc. And if you want really specific, because I decided to look that up, that would be between chapters 343 and 344. So it's when Robin and Blue are breaking into Iceberg's house in Water 7 to attempt to assassinate him again. So that's kind of roughly where that breaks down to, just in case anybody wanted to know. So I don't think that has any prevalence on what happens in the manga. Yes, I know there are different authors and other, performers and stuff like that, like their outside life does affect what goes into their, what they write and what they perform and how they act and stuff like that, which is perfectly understandable. You draw from your own, real life experiences and such, so none of that is surprising. I keep glancing over at the dog because he keeps either staring at me from my mom's bed or like walking in circles, and it is somewhat hard to try to get him to just lay down at this point in time. Just so he stops circling and pacing, and we're trying to figure out other things that could be wrong with him or anything else that we can do to try to help make him feel better as best we can. So if any any well wishes in regards to Rainy's health would be appreciated, and my sanity. Um, so, yeah, that's when Oda met his wife, and when they got married and stuff like that. Their first daughter, again, we do not know either of the daughters' names. Their first daughter was born in mid 2006 or so. So that would have been sometime, I think, during like end of Enies Lobby into the post Enies Lobby arc range. Again, don't really know if that would have been a whole lot of effect on it in regards to that, because he probably had most of that fairly planned out at that point in time. And then their second daughter was born in 2009, which would have been during the Impel Down and or Marineford arcs. Again, could have been slight effects there, depending on stuff. But I will point out that ever since he's had his daughters, there has been a slight shift. I would say a slight shift in regards to the way that parent-children, particularly father-daughter relationships, seem to play out in One Piece. Not that we didn't have a fair amount of good examples of those to begin with, which I will go over in a moment. Not as in-depthly as I did in the different in the Father's Day video that I did way back in like the first-ish year of the channel. I did a whole bunch of One Piece, different family days, Mother's Day, Father's Day, sisters, brothers, grandparents, stuff like that. So if you want a slight more information or a little bit more of my opinions on some of those different ones, you can go look up there. There'll be a couple, obviously, that I've added into this one since they were not in the Father's Day one at the time. You could guess about which ones those are. But I have seen, or at least I've somewhat noticed, a slight shift in regards to the way that Oda tends to write fathers and daughters particularly. And for reference, due to Oda's very rigorous schedule, he lives apart from his wife and daughters. He receives visits from them roughly once a week, or he goes and visits them once a week. They have a house within a very nice neighborhood in Tokyo, and then he is in the metropolitan area of Tokyo itself, because his schedule for the writing and the setting everything up for the manga and stuff like that takes so long, and it's such a big part of his life at that point in time. Of course, that's what he tends to do. We know that near the end of last year, beginning of this year, near the end of last year or so, I think it was partway in the Egghead Island arc is when we had that month break, and we know that during part of that time frame, Oda spent time with his wife and children. And I do believe that part of the time frame, obviously, that happened after the end of the Marineford arcs, and the flashback and the Goa Kingdom arc and stuff like that, going into the pre-time skip, ending out pre-time skip. I know that there was like a month-long break in that time frame as well, so Oda probably spent a fair amount of time with his family in that regard, with his wife and children and stuff like that, wife and daughters. I know that he doesn't talk very much about them in his like interviews and stuff like that. I think he may have mentioned them slightly, but I couldn't really find anything else where he's made mention of them, because he tries to keep those things separate. Although I think he has stated that like his daughter's favorite character, I think it was like his older daughter's favorite characters are like Chopper, and then like his wife's favorite character is Nami, and then I think he said if anyone can correct me on this, if I am wrong, I apologize. I think his favorite character is Luffy. But it's either Luffy or Zoro or both. He can have both. I don't care. He writes the dang thing. But he's done a fair amount where, over the course of post time skip particularly, there have been a fair number of father-daughter relationships. Most of the father-daughter relationships, a majority, a large amount of the father-daughter relationships that are in One Piece in general, all the way from the very beginning all the way up through now, are usually pretty positive ones, are usually really good ones. There's a couple that I'm going to get to that are obviously not good father-daughter relationships, and then there's one that's kind of like a middle ground, because it's just like, okay, it kind of depends on certain circumstances of what else we find out about this relationship before we make these determining factors. Because I'm me, I did want to make a point of, so I'm wearing a Disney shirt. This is Belle from Beauty and the Beast. And context, last night I watched Belle's Enchanted Christmas because I hadn't watched it yet. I didn't watch it around Christmas, and I'm like, I really like that movie. My mom's not home this weekend, so I watched the movie. Um, I'm stuck in the house with the dog, and I wanted to sing Disney and Christmas and blah 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 blah. Also, last year / this year is like the 30th anniversary of Beauty and the Beast. So yeah. Um, but so I watched that, and part of Beauty and the Beast story is, of course, Belle's relationship with her father, Maurice, and throughout Disney, there's a Disney trope, of course, of like, oh, the mom's dead, and the dad married the evil stepmother, however the case goes in regards to Snow White and Cinderella, or the mom's not really in the picture in regards to raising her own child because, Aurora, or different things like that throughout the course of a lot of the different Disney movies and stuff like that for the feature films and such. At some point in time, I probably will end up doing is, where I do the father-daughter, the different Father's Day, Mother's Day, stuff like that for like the Disney feature films for like the animated stuff, but I just haven't gotten around to that yet. I've got anime stuff planned. This year is going to be Bleach because I've been getting really into Bleach. So yeah, this year will be all the Bleach family videos. But the other one I did want to point out is yesterday, my dad and I also went to go see Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which I really enjoyed. I like Paul Rudd. I like him as Ant-Man. Most of the casting in Ant-Man, I would say, is pretty darn perfect and stuff like that. The guy that they have as Kang is just spot on perfect in that role. And such. So watch that. And a good chunk of Scott's motivation throughout that movie is, of course, his daughter Cassie, who is, he missed 5 years missed 5 years with her when he was, he was not blipped out of existence, but when he was, stuck in the quantum realm for, 5 hours for him, 5 years for everybody else, and everything that we see in Endgame. And then, of course, he, didn't get to be a huge part of her life when she was growing up because he was in jail, and, you get the idea. But ever since then, he's tried to do as best as he can to try to have a really good relationship with her. And, of course, other father-daughter stuff we've seen in MCU. Of course, we have Tony and Morgan from Endgame. We have Odin and Hela isn't necessarily the best example of a father-daughter relationship, but it's there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then, there was another one that I thought of. Well, I guess technically the father-daughter relationship that we get to see in Black Widow between her and Red Guardian and such, and her sister. But, what was the other father-daughter one I was thinking of? Oh, yeah, Hank Pym and Hope Van Dyne in regards to the Wasp stuff. That relationship there. Different variations of father-daughter relationships that we've seen in the MCU. Of course, Disney has various takes on this as well with Ariel and Neptune and, Ariel and Triton. I'll talk about Neptune later. Neptune will be later in the video. But now I'm going to go into what I rank as good father-daughter relationships that we see in One Piece. So these are just basically in order of like when we find out about them, basically the order we find out about their relationships. So first up is, of course, Genzo with Nami and Nojiko. Of course, we got all this during the flashbacks with Kokoyashi Village and everything. We see that he was there when Belmar brought them to the village, and when she claimed that she was going to be the one to raise them, and him and the doctor just have a very like, oh, that's not a good idea a reaction to that, but she's gonna raise them anyway. We see, Genzo, he's not officially their father, but he's their dad. He's their dad. He has his pinwheel and his cap because it makes Nami laugh and such. So that's why she has her, her symbol, of course, on her shoulder. And the pinwheel and the tangerine. There's, everything that we see with him and Nojiko and everything during the whole time when Nami is having to pretend to work for Arlong. Well, she's not pretending to work for him. She is working for him when she's trying to save up her money and everything so she can buy back the town. He, of course, knows this. And I think it just causes him and pretty much everybody in town so much pain having to pretend that they hate Nami during that whole time frame when she's trying to get the money, because if she knew that they knew, she even says if she knew that they knew, it would put so much more pressure on her. Like Genzo says that to her right before him and the rest of the villagers in Kokoyashi Village go to fight against Arlong. And stuff, and we just see how proud he is of Nami, or being angry over the fact that her bounty poster is her in a bikini, which I just find fun. Yeah, he's still there being very supportive of Nojiko and everything, so I love how we see that when we get little touchbacks to them. Next up, kind of the next father-daughter one we do get is Cobra and Vivi. So, which is a very much going to be a plot point in regards to Vivi's reaction to her father's death, obviously, with everything that happened in the manga and such, with everything that happened at Reverie in regards to that. So, and it's still not determined if Vivi at least knows that her father is dead, but we don't know exactly if she was there when it happened, like if it happened right in front of her, or exactly how that goes. It'll, we'll hopefully end up getting a flashback of what happened with that, with Vivi and Cobra and Sabo and Kuma, and everything else. But Cobra and Vivi have a very good relationship with each other. He was supportive of her going off to join Baroque Works, even if he was against it himself. He's like, this is what she wants to do. Cobra is just an exceedingly good king in general, with the amount that he cares for his people. He was willing to, he was so grateful to the Straw Hats for bringing Vivi back and saving his kingdom. He was willing to, show Crocodile the poneglyph in order to try to protect Vivi and his kingdom, and all of this other stuff. I'll go a lot more into like an in-depth kind of talk about Cobra and Vivi as rulers in Alabasta and the Neveltari family in Alabasta later on, when I get to my series where I talk about different royalty and rulers that are in One Piece and stuff like that, and I'll talk about them, of course, along with so many of the other ones that we've seen. But Vivi and Cobra. Cobra is obviously exceedingly proud of Vivi, and she adores him. And we see that throughout the course of the series, when we see them interact and in the cover pages and stuff like that. So, yeah, their relationship is exceedingly solid, and I don't think anybody in the fan base blames her for being upset that, for being upset that her father is dead. Nobody blames her for being upset about that. Morgan's was like, you were just crying 2 days ago. Shut up, you giant bird. Her dad died. Next up, we have Paglia and Caunus. They're, of course, in Skypiea. They're the first kind of full-on Skypieans that the Straw Hats end up spending any genuine amount of time with beyond, they met, Gonfall and such, and giant old lady at the Heaven's Gate. Amazon, I think is her name, maybe. I don't remember. But we see Paglia and Caunus around each other, and how much he takes care of her and she takes care of him, and they just have this great bond. I don't remember if we ever find anything about Caunus's mother. I also just kind of wanted to do a video about Caunus herself, because she's just awesome. And I may end up doing that at some point soon, but we'll see. But we also know that during the Death Game match or whatever that, that happens in the Gods Forest and, on Skypiea, on God's land with Inaru, that Paglia shoves Caunus out of the way, so he's the one that takes the lightning bolt. So yeah, there's that. We see that down the line, he's okay, and he's exceedingly supportive of her and everything that goes on there. Also a Skypiean father-daughter one is Kalgara and Moose. Now, a lot of people know who Kalgara is, obviously, with him and Nolan and all of that. But some people forget that he had a daughter, and her name was Moose. She's actually the first one to mention the sun god in One Piece. That was pointed out a while ago when they brought up the sun god Nika. We found out that she was the one that mentioned that way back. Way back. So we see some of that. We see their relationship. She's supposed to be sacrificed, but he doesn't want to sacrifice her, but he also wants to see what he can do to protect his people. Blah, 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 blah. We don't really get too much else there. But, we're going to an Abraham and Isaac situation here in regards to biblical references there. Yeah. We don't really get too many other ones, because there's not really father-daughter relationships that we see throughout, the Long Ring Longland arc, really, or the, Water 7 arc, or, Impelled Down. There's not really any father-daughter ones, even going into, like, the closest thing that we have to, like, a father-daughter relationship that's in, like, Thriller Bark is Moria and Perona. And even then, like, yeah, she cares about him. He's her captain, but she also is ready to just, like, straight up leave after she gets beaten by Usopp. Not that I blame her. And then, of course, at when the warlord system was being abolished, she heads out to go and try to find Moria when she finds out that he's on Hachinosu being captured by Blackbeard, and she wants to go help him. So I don't really know what else to say about that. Some people equate that to a father-daughter relationship, others don't, so I don't really know where that falls. And then we really don't get any others there that we know of at that point in time. I'll get to the one that we do kind of find out in that time frame later. But not really anything else pre-time skip. In the post-time skip setup, we clearly have Neptune and Shirahoshi. In regards to that, he kept her locked up in the Hardshell Tower to protect her from Vanderdecken. And it's not because he didn't think that she was weak or anything like that. It was because he was trying to straight up protect her. So it's a slightly different setup than what goes on with Actually and, like, Ariel and the Little Mermaid and stuff like that. But, like, you see where that comes from and such. And he just wants to protect his daughter and his children and his kingdom. In regards to later on, when we get to the Reverie, of course, he's ready to, when she's being, attacked by Charlos and his giant slave, Neptune is ready to just straight up be like, screw your reverie, screw your rules. I will attack this small man child that should be punted into next Wednesday for doing this to my daughter, and I don't care that it will cause a war. He's ready to do that before, Nilfgaard shows up. So we have that. Neptune, of course, just wants to protect Shirahoshi, but he also wants to let her be able to have her dream of being up in the sun and being on land and everything. Next up, we have Riku with Scarlet and Violet. Now, I can never remember if it's Violet or Viola, because it's like she's always Viola throughout certain parts of it, and then it gets switched, and I'm just like, I don't know. So I'll go back and forth between Violet and Viola. Also, there's a Viola that I work with. So, yeah. So we have Riku, King Riku Dole III and his two daughters, who, he seems to just adore them. Most of the fathers on this list just, like, adore their daughters. They just, like, want them to be happy and safe and taken care of and everything, and, like, support their dreams as much as possible. Most of them. And, with Riku, he ends up supporting Scarlet and wanting to go and marry Kyros, and such. We even see him being a father figure to Kyros and everything, in those regards, but this isn't about that. Yes, we do see that he has to be somewhat harsh at times when, like, Scarlet and Viola end up causing, like, trouble and stuff like that. That yes, he's harsh at times, but it's to help them and build character in them, and he lets Violet go and marry. That was wrong. He lets Scarlet go and marry Rebecca. Brain. Come on, brain. Work. I'm on lack of sleep for a couple of days, or less sleep than I should be on for a couple of days. So Riku lets Scarlet go and marry Kyros, eventually having Rebecca, which we'll get to. And of course, he lets her fake her death, so that way everybody in the kingdom thinks she's dead, even though they pretty much all know she's not dead, and that she went to marry Kyros, and they have a daughter and such. I'm like, lady, I love you, Scarlet, I do, but you're the princess of this kingdom, and yet you still end up going and seeing people at times at, like, markets and stuff like that. The people of Dressrosa are not that dense. They would recognize you. Your picture was probably in the paper, very well printed, for your eulogy and stuff like that. So it's just like, yeah, lady, I love you, but no. Your kingdom isn't that large. But so he was supportive in that, and he was, we saw how much Viola was trying to protect her father in regards to what happens with Doflamingo and such when he shows up, and what happens during the whole Dressrosa arc and stuff like that, where she's trying to protect her father and Rebecca. So we see those, and then going into Kyros and Rebecca, of course, throughout the whole, I do admit, we get the Rebecca's flashback a few too many times throughout the Dressrosa arc once we learn about her, once we get her backstory. If they'd done it once just when we get the initial backstory, and then like maybe once at the end after Kyros has defeated, after he's defeated Diamante, that would have been better. I think just cut out a little bit of that, pacing issue, but some additional flashback stuff is fine. Some of it's like, it's a little bit too much. But, we get all of this, he looked at, Kyros looked at Rebecca as this little perfect, pure thing that he didn't want to tarnish. Because, that was the way that he looked at her mother as well. But, he wanted to protect Rebecca to, with his life and everything. And even during the whole time when he is the Tin Soldier, he trains her, he protects her, he provides for her, he keeps her, he makes sure that she's as happy as he can make her in that time frame, because even though she doesn't know who, that he's her actual father, he still knows. And he's like, I'm not going to just stop being her dad just because she doesn't know that. I'm going to do everything I can to protect her. And we see that throughout the course of, the Dressrosa arc and her flashbacks, and then even once he's, back to his, human self when Sugar's power gets reversed. We see them there. They try to fight together against Diamante, and then, of course, the button on the end of the Dressrosa arc is, of course, that little poignant thing is, Rebecca gives up getting the chance to become a princess so she can go and just live with her dad, because that was all she ever wanted. And, Luffy gets her out of the house, gets her out of the castle and, carries her through the kingdom, and, everybody's chasing Luffy. Straw Hat, get back here! But they're like, yay, Rebecca gets to go be with her dad. And I love that. It was like, the entire kingdom was just like, yes, let Rebecca get to go and live with her father after the hell she had to go through with losing her mother and forgetting her father and everything else and having to be in that frickin' Coliseum. So we get that, and of course Rebecca just gets to be with Kyros, and of course she still gets to have the relationship with her, with Riku as her grandfather and Violet as her aunt. We still have those relationships there. Perfect. Everybody's happy. I'd be happier if Scarlet was still alive, but still everybody's happy. And then we have Pound, Chiffon, and Lola. So, most of the stuff that we get to see is a good chunk of the Oh My Beija's cover story, with Pound getting to actually see them again and fully getting to actually, talk to his daughters that he has not had the chance to actually have a close enough look at since they were babies. How he got that picture of them as babies that are in the locket around his neck that he has in Beija's On My Cover story, I have no idea. Unless, Lin does big birth announcements every time that her, anytime she has children. That would make sense, actually. And then he got the paper and cut it out and made a locket. That would have made sense. But, we see he heard that, Lola left at some point in time, and he just wants to be a part of their lives. And, we see that. And because that's the only version of a parent-child relationship, a father-child relationship that we see in regards to pretty much all of Big Mom's children, because we don't see any of the other fathers, as far as we're aware. We don't see any of the other fathers for any of the other children, and Pound wanting to be around his daughters is a very good thing. So we see a lot of that. We see him wanting to, find out what's going on with Chiffon and congratulate her on getting to be a mom and such like that, and on her marriage and everything. And of course he actually gets to be there when Lola gets married to Gaudi, so I love that. Call me sentimental. Call me a sentimental fool. What can I say? I still don't quite buy how Pound survived, okay? Drifting on a tart ship, whatever, all the way to Dressrosa. I mean, like, yeah, Mont Cherie is there and she could probably, like, heal him, but she's not there at that point in time. She's at the Reverie, but okay, I'll buy it in a very small amount. Um, uh, then we have Odin and Hiyori. So, you know, we get a very good button on this at the end of the Wano arc after, when Hiyori is dealing with Orochi. But, we see how it starts. We see, Odin just like, adores his little girl and everything like that, when they're on Roger's ship, on Whitebeard's ship, and then on Roger's ship, and then when he gets back to Wano and everything, and he just, wants her to play the best song and everything like that. And he's like, so you can play the song at my funeral, and she just starts crying. Like, dude, learn to read the room. But we also just see how much, Hiyori misses her dad throughout the whole 20 years that she grows up. Waiting for, her brother and the rest of the scabbards to return. Yes, she has Kawamatsu and then she has Denjiro, but it's not quite the same. And, she looks at them more as probably like uncles than she would like father figures. But, we see how much grief Hiyori still has for her father when she has Orochi pinned under the rubble, pinned with the sea stone nail, which, by the way, I would have just taken that damn nail and just shoved it all the way into his arm or something, so I know that it's not just gonna fall out or something like that. I would have done that if I was in Hiyori's shoes, just to make sure that it sticks once he's under the rubble, so he can't transform. But we see that, when she removes the mask, because she's always wearing the mask whenever she's playing her shamisen, biwa, whatever it's called. Whenever she's playing that, she always has the masks, the, kitsune, whatever, mask on. And then, of course, we see, she takes it off and she's just, tears are streaming down her face. And, she says to it was just like, the reason I always wear this mask whenever I have to play this song for you, you horrid man-child, is because it was my father's favorite song, and I hate the fact that I have to play it for you instead of being able to play it for my father. And, we see that. We see just how heartbroken that makes her. And, just all of that. But of course, she gets her, with Denjiro's help, she gets her revenge. I would have liked her to have been the one that, slice off his head one last time, be the one to fully end him. But I'm good. I'm okay with it being Denjiro, because we really don't see anything of like Hiyori being any form of like a fighter of any kind. I think she may have been taught some form of self-defense probably by Denjiro, but probably not a whole lot. And then we have Yasuie and Toko. God. So, throughout the course of, the beginning of Wano in the second act, we're introduced to Yasuie and Toko, and we find out that they're father and daughter. We find out later on in additional material that she's not his biological daughter, but that he adopted her. That he found her at some point in time and she was just starving. He's just like, I'm going to take her in and I'm just going to raise her as my own. And it's implied, I think, that she does not know that he adopted her. She just thinks he's her dad. Which, if they ever do end up reestablishing any form of the daimyos within Wano again, if they ever end up doing that, attempt to find any of the other daimyos families that might still be around, it would make sense for them to try to see if Toko would want to take over in the because she's Shimosuke by adoption, and with her, she's basically, acts, seems like a younger sister, to Hiyori and such, and, friend to, Toko, and, to Tama and Momo and such. So we get that there. But of course, there's the heartbreaking scene. Of course, Yasuie's, his execution and just all of that, and Toko just wanting to help him. And, just not being able to actually cry because of the godforsaken smiles. We see all of that. And the beat on Toko and Yasuie is during the fire festival, and they're sending up all the lanterns and such, that she she had initially wanted to write like, I hope I'm with you soon, daddy, or whatever it was, and via the advice from Kitetsu, Sukiyake, via his advice, she actually ends up writing, it's like, I hope you rest well, or something like that instead, thank you, daddy, and, whatever it is, and she sends that up. So I just like, I like that they show that with her. I would like to hope that maybe later on, if we get like, any additional things with Wano, that maybe we see Toko there as well, that'd be nice. I got 2 left in regards to good father-daughter relationships. So, the next set is Rayleigh and the Boa sisters. So, given what we saw of things during Amazon Lily arc and the kind of the post Marineford arc, and into, and then now with like the more recent stuff with Rayleigh and Shocky turning up at Amazon Lily to protect, them and the sister, and, Boa and her, Hancock and her sisters, that implies that he's basically, if they see anyone, if Hancock and her sisters will validate anybody as their father, it's gonna be Rayleigh. He's gonna be the only one that they would ever even remotely consider for that position, regardless of whether or not he is their biological father or not. And we see that. We see just like at the, at one point in time, Boa is like, she's angry at him. She's just like grabbing him by the nose. And I just find that so funny. When she's just like, she's not afraid to tell Rayleigh what she thinks of him. And we see that, and just their relationship, and like, Sandersonia and Marigold seem to get on well with, Rayleigh. So that's nice. We see all of that. We know that Rayleigh and Shocky, along with, I think it was Gloriosa, are the ones that like found the girls after Fisher Tiger's rebellion and everything, and they ended up, climbing down the Grand Line, and they were found by Rayleigh and Shocky and such, and they took them in and they took care of them and like nursed them back to health and everything, and probably helped with like, yes, physical healing in regards to any scars or anything else, malnourishment, stuff like that they would have had from being captives for long and then being on the run. And then helps with some of their mental scars as well, I would hope so. That just seems like something that they would do. And then of course, at the end, what we just saw with, when we got kind of like the flashback to Amazon Lily, with, Rayleigh and Shocky showing up to, just basically kick Blackbeard off the island. He shows up, he protects Boa and her sisters, and then we see just like Boa just like the little girl like resting her head on her dad's knee because she's so tired, and he's just like patting her head, and like we see Sandersonia and Marigold in the background and stuff. So yeah, I would say that would be the closest thing that they would ever admit to being their father. And then we have Kuma and Bonnie, which, from the amount that we have seen, from the way Bonnie talks about Kuma, it seems that it was a very good relationship that they had. A very solid one, regardless of whether or not she's his biological daughter or adopted daughter, clone daughter, if you want to go into that in regards to stuff with Vegapunk and so many clone theories, because everyone's a clone in One Piece now. Everyone's a clone. The person who's not a clone is Chopper. I don't know. So we have all of that. And we see that with, just in her flashbacks and how much she's wanting to get her father back and get like revenge for what happened to him from the world government and from Vegapunk with turning him into, the pacifista and everything. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll get more of that. Hopefully more of that backstory the next time we go into the memory world with Bonnie again in regards to, the memory bubble. and just kind of see how that affects her relationship with her dad. Um, and then we have, I wanted to point out the two bad father-daughter relationships that are the two most prominent ones that I could find in One Piece, and those would be Judge and Reiju, because Judge and Reiju clearly do not have a good relationship. He used her as an experiment. She's daughter zero. It's like just zero. No, don't name your child Zero. Name your ghost puppy that is your friend, and name her before Christmas Zero. That works. Um, but you know, he treats her as an experiment just the same way that he treats her brothers as an experiment. And, yes, he's proud of them and what they were able to achieve and everything like that, but he wouldn't care if she got hurt. Not really. Or like he would somewhat care, but not like the quite emotional reaction that he should have. He still uses her as a human weapon. He still has her programmed to have to, follow his orders and stuff like that. And just that relationship in and of itself is not good. Unless we get any more additional information about that, I really don't have anything else to add to that. And then the other one that I did want to put on here is Kaido and Yamato. Yes, I know that Yamato identifies as male, and that's perfectly fine. But even before Yamato went through that, we don't know what their relationship was like before everything happened with Oden. We just see Yamato witness what happens with Oden in the Hour of Legends, and then that very much is this huge effect on Yamato, and that's what they end up, they was like, I will become Kozuki and I will open the land of Wano and everything, and I don't care what you're going to do, father, you're not my dad anymore. And even during the battle on the roof of Onigashima, Yamato even tells, it's like, you're not my father anymore, you're not my father, I don't care, anything like that. And just just the fact of like, that's like, okay, yeah, a lot of people are like, well, Kaido called Yamato his son. I'm like, okay, he gets a point for at least accepting that Yamato wants to identify as male. Okay, he gets a point there. But with everything else that we've heard about how horribly he treated Yamato, he kept them locked up in the prison with the samurai. He has the cuffs on Yamato that have been on them basically since that they were like a child, since they were 8, and just everything else that happens with that, with the way that we see that, and just how how often Yamato said it was just like, my father would beat me until my bones were just all broken, and like I kept getting back up, and I just eventually I kept fighting Yamato. Kaido was never able to break Yamato, which is saying something about Yamato's will. Again, Yamato is one of the ones that has Conqueror's Haki. Yeah, I'm like, well, people on this list that we know have Conqueror's Haki that are daughters. I think Vivi should have it. I've stated that before. Not really Rebecca. Boa does, yes. Bonnie, I don't think so, but it all depends on what else we learn about them. But, Yamato has it. But, I look through so much of that, and I'm just like, I really freaking, I want Yamato to show up again. I do. I loved Yamato. I'm so going to be happy to watch all of that in the anime. I do not know who they're going to get for the English voice of Yamato. I do not know. But then the last father-daughter relationship I wanted to touch on for this video, it already ended up being longer than I did because I rambled, sorry, is the middle ground one that I have at the moment, depending on other information we get, is Shanks and Uta. I loved Film Red. I loved what they did with it. I loved all of Uta's songs. I have a whole series where I talk about Uta and her songs and powers and stuff like that. But with Shanks and Uta, with the relationship we see in the flashbacks that we get during the 2 episodes in the anime, 2-3 episodes there, and the flashbacks that we get in the movie itself, Shanks adored Uta. No one's going to deny that. He loved her. He wanted the best for her. And that's why he wanted, in the context of the movie, that's why he wanted to take her to the Elysia Kingdom so she could go there and study music and become this, world famous diva the way that she wanted to be. And then, of course, you go into the whole thing of like, well, he kind of left her there after the island got destroyed, technically because of her. not through her own knowledge, but because of her. And then he doesn't show back up again for another, what, 10, 12 years, something like that. Just all of that. And then, again, I know Film Red itself is not canon, but like some of the flashback stuff might be. Maybe not what happened on the Elysia Kingdom, but other bits of it might be canon, depending on what Oda wants to twist with that and make canon. But, it just. Yes, he showed up to help her. He gets points for that, but he also abandoned her on an island, as so many point out, rightfully so. An island with one person on it that she barely knew, and music that, if she sung, could destroy the world. You don't get points for that. You're losing points for this, Shay. You're losing points for this, and I love you, but you're losing points for this. But yeah, so there's a lot that goes into that relationship. But Shanks is exceedingly protective of Uta and everything like that. We do see that in Film Red, encouraging of her. And again, we'll see if Oda ends up wanting to use her in the manga down the line. We'll see what happens there. We'll see how that relationship may or may not shift with that information, any additional information we get. So we'll see. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to briefly go over some of those. And, part of it might be Oda is being a little bit more cautious of, portraying. I'm like, yes, One Piece is about found family, and that's not a problem. Most of the people on this crew have, they're each other's found family, or they have additional found family down the line and stuff like that. Either because they have horrible relationships with their actual biological family, or they're mediocre, or, like, Usopp didn't have a bad relationship with his mom. She just died. Same thing with, a couple of the other ones. Their parents are dead in a lot of cases, but, I like that with a lot of those relationships, Oda is trying to highlight, yes, there's, your own, biological family is not a problem. It all depends on just how those relationships are built. But yeah, this ended up being longer than I wanted. Sorry. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I do recommend Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I think they did a great job with it. It's fun. Has some really good fights in it. And yeah, stuff about Rainy. Any well wishes for Rainy would be appreciated. So, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.